Sexual harassment is rooted in gender inequality and unequal power relations. Responsible and respectful reporting on sexual harassment has an important role to play in shifting power by shining a light on the way in which our systems have served to silence survivors and protect perpetrators. The media also has enormous power as a lever of change to challenge the norms and attitudes that accept and normalise sexual harassment.
Since the Me Too movement, we've really witnessed significant shifts in the community and corporate attitudes as well towards sexual harassment. These days, organisational cultures of cover-up or silence are no longer really accepted practice. Despite these shifts, however, sexual harassment continues to occur at unacceptable rates in Australian workplaces, and it's widespread. There's no industry or organisation that's immune.
The mainstream media is one of the key sources that, to generalise, that members of our community use for getting information on gender-based violence. So, media really have quite a pivotal and powerful role to play in shaping how the community understands this issue.
Journalists can sometimes be guilty of forgetting that our readership or our audience includes not just neutral people who have no experience of sexual harassment, but also includes survivors as well as offenders and perpetrators. And when we're speaking to any audience, we should assume that that audience will include both survivors and perpetrators, and that our language and our framing can affect their experience and interpretation of what's going on as well.
Survivors who are identified in media coverage may face significant negative impacts on their personal and professional life, well past the life cycle of the story.
One of the key differences is the heightened risk on the individual for negative repercussions, particularly in gaining work once their story is made public.
There are several experts who would argue against us using case studies because of the risks that we're foisting on survivors and the burden that they're expected to carry. But the flip side of that, I suppose, is that if we erase case studies, then are we denying survivors the opportunity to tell their story?
A lot of it, for me, comes back to informed consent and informed choice. So if you have a survivor who wants to speak out as a case study, that you need to make sure that you have informed them of what those risks actually are, and to make sure that they're making a well-informed decision as possible to publicly disclose. You might be talking to them about their options to remain anonymous, to have key details redacted from their case study so they can still speak out, while minimising the potential for those negative ramifications. I think the other thing is also comes back to contextualizing it. So talk about what Prabha said, right? The fact that we know that people who speak out are so often punished or ostracized from their workplace. So contextualize that in the reporting. It's also important to recognize that people from marginalized communities are often much less likely and less able to report or to be in a position to publicly speak out about workplace harassment. So if we use the example of trans and gender diverse folk, for example, we know that people from these communities face huge rates of unemployment or underemployment because of discrimination and the marginalization of those communities. So if you're from a community where just having a job is extremely challenging, you're probably not going to want to, publicly speak out, or it's much more difficult for you to speak out and report harassment that's occurring.
Get legal advice as early as possible for yourself, your organisation and your sources.
Take the extra precaution to make sure that you have informed consent to talk about the individual's allegations. If you're going to name them, do whatever you can to ensure that individual gets legal advice. If they don't have the means to do it, this might be controversial, but I actually think the onus is on the journalist and news publication to pay for them to get independent legal advice.
Given the ongoing personal and professional impact for survivors and the high incidence of sexual harassment in Australian workplaces, responsible reporting on sexual harassment should cover more than an individual case. Expert commentary can highlight systemic and industry-wide issues or trends by giving context, statistics, or evidence.
talking to survivor advocates, counsellor advocates can be really important. It takes some of the spotlight and the responsibility off individual survivors. And it can also help in providing that broader contextual framing that's so important. So, it can help reduce the likelihood that you're just framing this as a very individualized problem, because people in those peak bodies can speak to it as a more systemic issue.
The evidence is clear. Violence against women, including workplace sexual harassment, is gendered, but most importantly, it's preventable. Good reporting is part of the solution and sets a tone that women should be safe, equal, and respected at work. Preventing violence against women is everyone's responsibility, and the media has a critical role to play in driving change. For more information on media reporting on violence against women, visit ourwatch.org.au.